I was 12 years old when the idea of vegetarianism was introduced to me on a really realistic level. I had known about it. I had even tried my hand out a few times, but it was never something that seemed plausible. It was on a road trip that my change of mindset occurred. My family, all packed away in the back of our car, ended up driving behind a truck full of pigs. I remember sitting there staring at the little pink snouts sticking to the crate in desperate hope. Being the easily upset 12-year-old I was, and my dad being the well-informed adult he was, who also happened to enjoy telling me things, decided that moment would be the opportune time to announce to me that those pigs were extremely intelligent and also knew they were headed to the slaughterhouse and were extremely paranoid of it. Needless to say, that moment scarred me for life. And it was that moment that made me announce my decision to never eat pork again. Beef was the obvious next step. They were smart too, I figured, and the idea of eating mammals had always bothered me. Chicken was a hopeful next, but there was only so much my mom would take before demanding that I became my own cook. But half was enough to satisfy me for then. Because when I set into this, that was what it was all about. I didn't like the idea of killing things so we could gorge upon their flesh. So why am I telling you the woes of a younger me? Well, it wasn't until recently I realized that my decision has affected more than the lives of a couple of cows. Eating beef doesn't just mean cows die. It causes deforestation, an interruption in the carbon and nitrogen cycles, water pollution, and water shortages. And these are only a few. The meat consumption of us humans has quadrupled since 1961. It went from 71 million tons of meat a year to 284 million tons of meat a year in only 2007. By now, in 2011, it could be even greater. That is massive growth. With this massive growth in the industry, more land is being demanded. At this point, roughly 30% of all the Earth's ice-free land is devoted to agriculture. A large portion of this land used to be rainforest. And every single day, about another 40,000 acres of rainforest are destroyed and converted into land for cattle to graze on. Only for cattle, no other purpose. Once the trees are removed, the soil, which is already infertile from all the rain, is exposed to the elements. It dries out and becomes impossible for anything to grow on, even cows. The farmers are then forced to move their herds to new land by burning down more of the forest. Once that land dries out, the cycle just repeats. This is why it's a never-ending process of burning down the forest. On average, a single pound of beef was a result of 200 square feet of rainforest. Doesn't sound like a lot? Consider how many pounds of beef are in one cow. That's a lot of rainforest. And so you're probably wondering why it matters. It's just a forest. There are lots of forests. But it does have an effect. In fact, it has a huge effect. The tropical rainforest has often been referred to as the world's lungs by the scientific community. It was given this name because of the vast quantities of plant life, all of which absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen through the natural process of photosynthesis. Another name coined is the air conditioner of the world. It seems a little odd for a tropical rainforest, but in reality, the dark forest canopy absorbs light and prevents it from reflecting back into the atmosphere. But one of the largest aspects of the rainforest is the incredible variety of life it contains. Not only are 50% of the world's species housed in the rainforest, more than 50,000 of these species are destroyed each year due to deforestation. Approximately 60% of this deforestation is a result of cattle. Therefore, cattle farming destroys nearly 25,000 species every year. Beef is also a huge contributor to massive disruptions in both the carbon and nitrogen cycles, vital biological cycles which allow the world to function as it does. As most of us know, global warming is becoming even more prominent in our day-to-day lives, and as well, carbon dioxide is one of the largest contributing factors. Essentially, what goes on is the carbon cycle gets misbalanced. Instead of there being equal amounts of carbon in the atmosphere, which then gets absorbed by plants, which decomposes into the soil, then erodes into the ocean, and then evaporates into the atmosphere again, there's too much carbon dioxide being released through all our wonderful human activity that the Earth can't handle it. As a result, we end up with increasing global temperatures. So how does beef tie into this? Well, thanks to raising cattle, we are destroying our forests at alarming rates. The very thing which helps move carbon through the environment. And through all the methods of transporting and raising beef, we end up producing more carbon at the same time we destroy the Earth's way of dealing with it. And this makes sense how? Nitrogen is another disastrous side effect of cattle farming. Like carbon, nitrogen is required in the environment. In fact, it is vital in plant growth by aiding in the production of chlorophyll. Yet too much of a good thing causes, to put bluntly, plants to die. Nitrogen halts production of ethylene, which is the chemical which causes plants to ripen. Most nitrogen, around 80%, exists in the atmosphere. It reaches the ground through fixation, and once there, the hungry plants use it to grow nice and tall. But once the plants decompose, and the nitrogen enters the soil again to be reused, then it leaves the soil through denitrification. However, if nitrogen is introduced through another source, such as fertilizer used to grow the grain to feed the cattle, the nitrogen cycle is overloaded. The plants take up too much nitrogen, and once it dies and decomposes, it simply re-enters the soil to be wrongly used by another innocent plant. The water used to raise cattle is also absurd. 1 kilogram of beef takes 5,507 gallons of water to produce. Gallons. Cut out that 1 kilogram of beef, just one, for an entire year, and you will have saved double the water you would have from using a low-flow shower head for the entire year. Give up 1 kilogram, and you're saving the same amount of water you would have saved for not showering that entire year. Already we are feeling the pinch of water. Only 3% of the world's water is fresh. And of this already meager 3%, 2.5% is frozen away and not usable by humans at the moment. Of course, if climate trends keep as they are, who knows in 50 years. But now, only 0.5% of the water we have on the Earth is usable by humans. Now consider this. Half of the water in the US, over 50%, goes to cattle farming. How does this make any sense? When we look at places in the south of the US facing water crises where their reservoirs are beginning to run low. Take Lake Mead, for example, which is outside of Las Vegas. This city is home to 2 million people, and 90% of their water comes from this lake, and it is running out. Yet all over the US, they are still using water to simply raise cattle. And of the little water we have, cattle farming is busy polluting so that what we have left is no longer usable. When nitrogen, which is found in high concentration in cow manure and fertilizer, gets into water sources, this excess nitrogen causes dead spots in the water. This is because a process called eutrophication begins. What happens is that nitrogen encourages rapid growth of the life forms of the water, most specifically, the phytoplankton. This rapid growth is unstable, and the massive blooms of algae all die, using up large quantities of oxygen in the water as they decompose and release carbon dioxide. This prevents anything else from growing there for a very long time. A famous dead spot is the dead spot of the Gulf of Mexico, where fish fertility has dropped drastically in the water of now only 1 or 2 parts per million of oxygen. This is due to the massive farming of corn, wheat, and other grains, mostly to feed cattle, and the fertilizer now pouring into the ocean. Did you know 95% of fertilizer ends up in the environment rather than wherever it was intended to go? As you can see, the environmental effects cattle have on our Earth are inexcusable. When we look for ways to help the environment, nothing compares to giving up beef. Not only will it protect our forests, specifically our tropical rainforests, keep the nitrogen and carbon cycles running properly, conserve water, and protect the water we do have from pollution. Have you ever heard of the methane cows produce? 20% of greenhouse gas emissions are thanks to cows. That's a whole lot of methane. But don't get the wrong idea. Obviously, eating beef isn't all bad. In certain places, it is 100% justifiable. In places which land cannot be farmed, and the cows are allowed to wander freely, and the whole process is organic, that beef is the sort of meat we should be eating. The problem with the beef industry is simply how massively oversized it has become. We eat so much beef and raise so much cattle that it has reached unnatural levels which the world simply can't support. It is touching our lives in every way possible, and not in the good way. It is destroying our environment, causing health problems due to the availability and cheap as well as protein, and famine problems as food we could so easily be feeding to the people who need it ends up going into the mouths of the cows, which end up in our McDonald's. What we need to do is simply reduce how much beef we eat. If we reduce how much beef we ate by 20%, that's just 20%. It would be like everyone switching their cars to highly efficient Priuses. It would be saving massive amounts of water and grain, which could then go to the places that actually need it. Beef is perfectly acceptable as a treat, but it should not be the basis upon which our entire diets are built. The world is obviously not designed to produce so much beef. Something has to give. Either our population go down, or the cow population goes down. It is inefficient and destructive, but if people can realize that and accept that maybe beef is something to be appreciated and savored, then we can reach a balance of production and consumption that our world can actually handle. Because right now, we have far exceeded that point. I have one final image, which, for me, really brought home the idea of not eating beef. So just imagine this. Right now, you are sitting down to eat a nice, big, fat, juicy steak. Now imagine you are surrounded by 45 starving children, their stomachs swollen from lack of food. In each of their bony, frail hands sits a bowl, an empty bowl. Each of these bowls could have been filled with a grain that went into the production of that single steak you are about to eat. Does that still sound appetizing? Yet this is the ridiculousness which drives the industry. So just remember next time that it's not all as it seems. Behind every steak is an army of resources. And maybe you'll decide to just eat one less meal of beef every week. It's nothing much, but if everyone did it, in the same way that everyone deciding to eat beef has had these massive repercussions, everyone deciding to cut back a little, well, that could be the start of a revolution. Thank you.